Okay, thank you, Shoseki. So this podcast is the Butterfly Effect, where we are discussing what ifs of things that maybe didn't happen or happened differently, and how the world would be affected by that. We're good with the topic I suggested, Moth.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so this one we're talking about what if the internet as we know it was never released for public use, if it was only kept for the government and the military, and life as we know it had kept along as it always had prior to the internet existing.
Mm.
And I don't know, some of you maybe have not even
Panday T just
lived
crossed
their
the digital
lives
threshold.
without the internet, depending on your age.
Big Trucker oh 03
One
just
moment.
crossed the digital
And welcome
threshold.
everyone just joining. Um, Feel free to just grab a seat over there in any of the beanbags or the chairs. So, if did you have any thoughts first, Moth, at all regarding the internet not being usable
Well,
by the public, not available for the public?
man, it would change so much. Like for one thing,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't be here right now, in
No, not in
VR.
VR. No, not at
No.
all.
I mean online gaming, but like way more important things too, just like information. The
Mm-hmm.
government would have control of that, so we
Mm-hmm.
could be believing completely crazy things right now if the government was feeding us information
Yeah.
without us being able to check it ourselves. So, and there's all kinds
And
of avenues.
and you have to think too, like in before the internet, in the past, like stuff still got around.
Divine Slayer
Um,
420
you
just
know, there
stumbled
was
Lisa
always
just stumbled into our
you've heard
virtual
stories
realm.
passed around. And it's funny
They
too
look
because
lost.
some of the stories that I heard passed around when I was a kid, some that were told just as like fantastical stories that just were like, holy shit. You go and when you actually try to fact check them, yeah, they don't actually add up, or
Yeah.
it's the actual story is actually
Mhm.
vastly different than the version that you
Quick
came. So
hide
it's
the
kind of like
drugs
a game of
fire rat
telephone,
is
right?
wanted
Where
in
it's
several
passed
Yeah.
other
around so much,
spaces.
things are
Take
definitely
cover and
changed
shoot.
by the time they get to you. And things too, such as like just anything we do online, like e-commerce, digital marketing, social media, wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have Amazon, we wouldn't have Google, we wouldn't have
Food
Facebook,
delivery. Well,
yeah.
we'd still have food delivery, just not
But yeah, you'd have to call.
DoorDash.
You'd have to call and place an order. You'd have
No.
to actually speak with a person. And just
Mhm.
for anyone who's in here, the music, if you want to mute it or lower the volume, you do have
Blue
controls
Jay
on your wrist to do
420 is
that. So
here for
please feel
cuddles and
free.
milk and is all out of
Um,
cuddles.
so anyway, Amazon, Google, Facebook, we wouldn't have any of that at all.
Mhm.
Um, and then the retail businesses would still very much be like actual physical stores, going to locations yourself. So if you didn't have something
Mhm.
in your town, you would either have to drive to a town that had that store, or you would just go without because there was no other way for you to get it. We wouldn't have all the other ways of communication that we have
Yeah.
now. We wouldn't have email,
Iron Wolf is here to
instant
kiss snowy
messaging,
butt
Discord.
cheeks.
We wouldn't have texting. We wouldn't have,
Yeah.
we would still be in the land of, having to actually see someone in person, God forbid. Landline
And
telephones, which most of us don't have,
oh yeah, that'd
normal
be
snail
crazy.
mail, as they call it. Sorry, Moth, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just gonna say, and imagine how differently COVID would have went because everything went online,
Oh, yeah. You know
and if we
what?
didn't have access to that.
I'll be honest. I know that during the pandemic, so a lot of people compared themselves because there was a pandemic like basically 100 years before COVID, and then there was COVID. And
Mhm.
one of the things that even when you're looking at images and stuff from that previous pandemic, you see a lot of people masking, and not so much masks as we know them now, with the ear loops and everything. A lot of it is just, tied over their faces, that kind of stuff. but you see that that's prevalent. And I actually did a little bit of research during the pandemic, during lockdown, because I was interested because we had all those little subsects popping up that were um, protesting the immunizations, protesting the mask ordinance, protesting they were bored. There was not a lot to do, so there was protesting going on.
Oh yeah.
And I looked into it, and yes, okay,
Mental germ
back then
arrived.
there were some people that were against it. There were some people that were protesting it. But that being said, they were also in such more of a minority than even the protests that were during COVID. The Everything was a lot more effective. Things ended a lot sooner because there wasn't this this online community where people could
Mhm.
spread this misinformation, and they could get together and be all
Yeah.
misguided and do whatever they're doing. So
And
the
strength in
fact that
numbers.
yeah, exactly, and people were they were obviously, of course, people were unfortunately still dying, and the pandemic still
Did
like
you hear
ripped
that?
through everything. But um because those sects of people weren't as big in the protesting, and the masking was a lot more efficient because people actually did it, they took it seriously, they knew it was life or death. There was a lot more control then, and I don't just mean a government control, but like people wore the masks, they stayed home. There wasn't as much needless death or needless propagation of
Yeah.
the disease as there was during COVID, because people are the government's trying to control you, and just go and have a party or whatever. So that did actually make a huge difference, whether people realize it or not.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, that being said, of course, because we call this the information age, everything is literally at our fingertips.
Mhm.
Um, it wouldn't be, right? So we'd have to do it old school, and old school was actually physically going to a library, either being there and having the books and reading the books there, or checking the books out and taking them home, and having them for the week that you got it loaned to you for, and then having to bring it back. But all of that information that we can so easily search up now, Google, Wikipedia, whatever you use, you would actually have to physically go to a library or own stuff yourself. I remember an encyclopedia
Mhm.
salesman coming to my home and my parents
Oh yeah.
buying a set of encyclopedias.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, my brother still has those actually.
yeah. Oh, fun fact, the encyclopedias that my parents bought, I remember the oh my god, Family Ties, the show Family Ties,
Mhm.
um way back when, exact same set of encyclopedias that were on their bookshelf in
Oh.
that show. So
Mhm.
that was like my little bragging point anyway.
Yeah, that's
um
cool.
and then
Um,
even like, oh, go ahead,
oh
hon.
sorry. I was just gonna say, like, as a whole, which I think I probably know the answer, but would you consider it
Fi
a
has
good thing
joined.
or a
Quick,
bad
hide your
thing if the
avatars.
government had control of the internet and we didn't even know it existed?
Well, the thing is, if we actually don't know it existed, we wouldn't have an opinion. But that being said, what do you think that they would be doing with it other than internal communication, if they had, like, the government and the military had this all to themselves, and the civilians didn't have access and didn't even have awareness?
Well, if we're talking one government having control of it, or would it be all the government, like say all the first world countries
And
had
let's go
control
with
of?
all the first world countries. Let's go with that one.
Okay.
Makes it a little more interesting,
Well,
I think.
yeah, I'd say that would maybe have them kind of banded together in some sort of alliance. So that would be kind of a
Okay.
positive, but at the same time, I believe the government would mainly use it for control. Like they would be
Mm-hmm.
speaking with other governments and like kind of coordinate this like release of information
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
for whatever kind of control tactics.
So I know a lot of people probably are aware of the novel 1984, Big Brother, the
Intense
whole,
purple has
society's
entered the
watching you,
simulation.
society, you're being controlled, that kind of thing. I think that
How do you
the way
get
we are.
how do you get skins? How do you get skins?
I knew the storm was
Anyway.
coming.
Oh man, I hit Crystal Lake and so many when I was there. Anyway, so I feel like it would be a lot easier for them to do that. The thing is now, like we say Big Brother, right? And it's always been, the government's watching you, the government's controlling you, there's cameras
Sorry,
everywhere,
Violet is now part
they're
of our
seeing
virtual
everything that
mischief.
you're doing. Thank you. But right now, the way things are, like you and I and everyone with access to a cell phone, we're really Big Brother, okay? Because something happens, what's the first thing people do? They pull out their phone, they record, it goes online. So we as citizens are actually more of a Big Brother in that way than the whole
J420
government
just crossed the
and
digital threshold.
1984-ness. But I feel like if the internet was kept for the government, for the military, and it was about control and getting the information, it would be much more of like a 1984 kind of scenario than we would have right now.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Did you want to turn it over to the audience?
Oh yeah, we can get
shortly,
a little
or
bit of
yeah,
no.
some...
What we can do is we can go back and forth, get some
totally
thoughts, and then continue. So if there's anyone, if you want to jump up and down or put your hand up, if you'd like to say something, Ghostroid, you're halfway in the floor.
Pirate Yo Ho Ho just stumbled into our virtual realm.
Nobody had any input or
hold
any
their
thoughts
hand.
on
They
what we're
look
speaking
lost.
about here? No? Okay, that's fine.
Nope. Oh, okay.
We
Well,
can continue on. Oh, and another thing.
maybe Blue Jay?
No, it was just Jim.
Sorry, Divine.
Oh, it's just jamming. Okay.
I said I got here late. I'm not sure what you're talking
Okay,
about.
so
Oh.
what we're talking about is basically it's the butterfly effect. So how would things be different if, whatever the topic is? So the topic today is if the internet was not for public consumption, if the only people that had access to it were the government and the military, what would happen? And I see you, Echo, jumping, and you are Megaphone. Go ahead.
Well,
You're muted if you're talking. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Sorry. I mean, I don't see that as a bad thing, to be honest. Like, I think our society would still be riding bicycles outside until the street lights come on, climbing trees,
That's a good point.
And we wouldn't have that 24-hour news cycle, at our fingertips.
Which is unhealthy.
Well,
yeah. And our teachers would be right. We wouldn't have a calculator in our pocket.
Yeah.
So
true.
like math and science, we would be like excellent at it, right? Because we would
actually have to put it in practice. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I will say though, with the 24-hour news cycle, I feel like I remember 24-hour CNN being a thing before, or maybe it was at the beginning of the internet. I don't know. I do remember.
Maybe it's the Mandela effect.
Yeah, maybe. I will say I do remember when was it Pope John Paul, when they were on the death vigil. I know the internet existed then because I was gaming and I had that thing on, playing games and playing in the background the whole time. But I do feel like there was, because of television, a little bit more of a news cycle than the newspaper just coming to your house every day. But yeah, a lot of good points there, Echo. Thank you. And another thing that would be a little bit different is, oh, one sec, hang on.
I think Divine jumped first, just
okay.
so you know.
Okay.
Sorry, Iron.
Give me one sec.
You might have jumped first. I don't know. I was looking in this direction, though.
Okay. Divine, your megaphone, and then I'll get Iron.
Oh, Ironworth can go first.
Okay. After all that.
Sorry.
Okay, let me get you megaphone iron. Hang on. I had his menu up too, Divine. Okay, you are megaphone iron wolf. Please share.
Yeah, so I think people has the need to communicate. So if we didn't have access to the internet, we would have used radio or Morse code or something like that instead. And I think I don't remember what it's called. There was a language that was not Spanish, but similar. That was really big for a while, but it died out with the internet because English. What do you say? Esperanto, yeah, exactly. So probably we should learn Esperanto and use Morse code or have radio communications worldwide instead of the internet.
Yeah. Or some other invention that would have came about
CB
because the
radio.
internet was not available.
Yeah,
CD would be big again.
yeah, exactly.
Ham radio.
Okay, I'm ready now.
Okay. Get you on me. Okay, Divine, go ahead.
Okay,
Thank you,
so
Iron.
I kind of believe or think the same thing as Iron, except for I think that it would be actually a good thing because nowadays in school, all they have is tablets, and basically they've given up on kids like even doing their signatures or anything like that. Everything is on the tablet, like even like just signing your name or anything like that. So they don't know how to do cursive, they don't know how to even write hardly properly. And even with me, like my writing is horrible, but if I had to write letters to like talk to people or something like that, like back in the day, you know, all the time, and not be on my phone texting people, if I had to actually write letters, I think that everybody's handwriting would be better. We
Yeah.
possibly have more books. People would possibly read more as well.
It'd be more
I
social
think
skills.
writing more poetry and all that stuff. It would be. I think it would be better. But then again, you know, we don't know what we would be missing if we. But yeah, if we knew, then it would be horrible.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, Divine.
You're welcome.
Okay. And speaking of just, you know, poetry and all that kind of stuff, like school stuff, that would be a lot different too. I know there was already like distance learning, e-learning. Actually, there was distance learning existed in advance of the internet as well. It was generally you would actually get mailed the packets and you'd have to do the work on your packets, like physical work. But there was e-learning, and COVID really ramped up the e-learning because of lockdown and a lot of students having to stay home and doing stuff over the internet. And in that
Short
way, like the
flush is
internet
too
kind of
late.
became a necessity. But another thing that would have been affected is that like you would have had to just go to school, go to college, go to university, go to the town that the school's in, you know, for the bigger kind of learning at the end.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
In high school, I took a distance, and I mean, I'm 32, so it's been a bit. I took a distance learning like ASL class, and that was something like if you're not taking by video, that's going to be really difficult to learn because obviously you learn best by watching.
Yes.
ASL is American Sign Language, in case anyone doesn't know. So not learning that would have, I mean, obviously, if you are in this dimension where it never happened to begin with, you wouldn't miss it. But from this dimension, thinking about it, I would be really sad not to know that or not to have that experience.
And too, like with the distance learning being like that, like with packets and that kind of stuff, you actually don't have the access to the teacher like you would if you were in class or even online, where you could get attention, get help, ask a question. So it you know, makes it that little bit harder because you're basically on your own, I never did any kind of distance learning myself, but I imagine there was probably like a hotline or like a time period where you could call and get assistance from a teacher or somebody in charge of the chorus. But that again, another barrier. It's not as easy. It's not as streamlined. It exists, but kind of in a flawed capacity because of what you're missing out on when you do that.
Blue Jay may have something to add. I'm sorry.
Hang on one sec.
Um,
Okay, your megaphone.
Really, my thing, the one thing I noticed you said was like if the government had access to it and we didn't. And honestly, I feel like that would just make things worse. Like, because if we didn't have access to it and the government did, it would be out there. Therefore, people would get their hands on it one way or another, and then they would end up using it for more illegal activities than anything. And it would just, I think if the government had it as well, it would be easier for them to hide things from society than more easy anyways. You know what I mean? But that's all.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, excellent points. Absolutely. Another thing that would be affected too is like grassroots movements. And these things have always existed, but they've always kind of started locally and on a smaller scale. The internet really gave things like that a platform. So they were able to mobilize more easily, more effectively, grow in larger numbers, both for good and for bad, because there's a lot of them that are very good and should be there. But then again, the misinformation, the whole rallying for the wrong cause, if you will, it's a lot easier to get people, especially where it comes to politics. And again, I know I keep going back on this, but like the pandemic, the lockdown, the immunizations, that kind of stuff, it's a lot easier to spread that misinformation to, maybe even take actual facts, but present them in a way that kind of skews and twists that so that it's more easy for you to believe something that's not actually true, or like taking, a small percentage of something that happened and turning it and exaggerating it into something much larger than it actually is. It becomes a lot easier to do that kind of stuff as well. Divine, one sec, let me megaphone you. Okay, go ahead.
I would just like to say if the government had it and we didn't, I would just call upon my wonderful Black Queen. Talking about, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? No?
One
I
sec,
can
you
tell
you blipped out and lost megaphone.
Oh,
There you go,
no.
you're back on megaphone again.
I said I would just, if the government had it and we didn't, I would just call upon the Black Queen. You know who I'm talking about? Penelope Garcia from Criminal Minds.
Yes, yes.
She would hack it. She would hack it in a heartbeat, and she'd be like, "Yeah, let's go."
Forever. Then we'd be back here.
Yeah. It'd be a circle.
Yeah. Well, not to go completely like off topic, but like any kind of fictional representation of like split dimensions where like one thing changed and it made two different timelines. The timeline always tries to correct itself. So like if that was real, that would probably end up happening in this alternate like reality, like where somehow we would get back to everyone has the internet again.
Yeah.
But
I did megaphone you there, Ghostroid. I saw you jumping. Go ahead.
Yeah, if the government had it and we didn't, I don't think it would have advanced as much. They would just be stuck on email and mailing, sending files back and forth. I don't think none of the innovation, all the advancements,
less creative innovation for
right,
sure.
have been through people trying to make things what they want work.
Yeah.
Again, the Black Queen.
Yes, thank you.
Fictional character.
She would save us.
So what without having the internet, and a lot of the innovation that's come from that, it would have actually pushed innovation along a different path as well. So the way, landlines and that kind of thing, we could have seen advancements in that weren't reliant upon the internet. Things could have changed there in those terms, just with like overall telecommunications. And satellite communication, radio, television, they would have actually just, their development would have kept on, become more sophisticated. I mean, you have to think that with television, right, we went from the original, like the black and white, that, probably everybody's parents or grandparents grew up with. And then we went into color TV, which, I mean, in its time was like just this huge innovation. And then we went, standard definition, high definition, and it would have just progressed along those lines as well, just getting more and more sophisticated with the technology. And there would have actually been, I mean, everybody complains about the postal service. I've heard Canada, oh my God, and US, I've heard people complain, but these days, like if you have a package in Canada, right? Say like here, for example, weed is legal here, and you can literally order it online and have it delivered.
745
Now,
beamed in.
with weed, because it's an age-restricted product, much like alcohol, you have to answer your door. You have to show your ID to accept your delivery. Now, if those deliveries were coming during FedEx, UPS, or Purelator is another company like that we have that's Canada specific, but they would have that package on the truck. They would bring it to your door. They would knock on your door. You would sign, they check ID, you deliver, you'd get it. What does Canada Post do? What does Canada Post do with most packages, especially larger packages? They don't put it on their mail truck that they're driving around. Those vehicles are actually quite small. So in the morning, all those packages, they sit there and they pre-enter all their pickup slips. They don't even knock on your door. They show up, they put a pickup slip on your door, and they fuck off. And even if you're sitting home all day waiting for the package, no one's going to ever knock on your door, and you're going to have to go pick it up.
You just have to catch them.
Yeah. Well, even if you catch them, it's not on their truck. It's sitting there waiting for you, at the pickup location for you to pick up. So I feel like that kind of stuff would have been more developed, just for communication, for commerce. I feel like we would still have, because, 10-ish years ago even, there was still people taking it to your door, delivering it. It was on that mail truck. So I feel like that probably would have been more of a thing, because it's not as easy, to just like have that. Like and even now, like we have Amazon, right? They have pickup lockers. Generally, when we order on Amazon, just so we don't have to worry about somebody, we're in a secure building. So if they can't get in, they're not going to deliver. Sometimes I've seen them, I've left for work and I've seen like Amazon packages literally just sitting in the lobby. And I'm like, oh, someone's going to steal those. So we have it set to a pickup location, and then we just go and get it ourselves, which just takes some of the headache away. They might have done something like that with the actual mail services. So you would have had that option to have it put in some sort of a locker to go pick up at your convenience, rather than having to worry about being home for the delivery. And even like travel, like I feel like trains, not so much, maybe flight stuff, but railway, I feel like those probably would have become more advanced as well. Railways as they are now are pretty much like they were, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that kind of thing. But then you look at, the monorail episode of The Simpsons, right? That kind of is the next big thing. I know some of that exists, but it's not the norm, right? The norm is how we know railways as they are now and as they have been for a while. And also physical media would still be a lot more prevalent. So we had records. We had, I'm trying to remember something that my parents had, big tape things. Were they called
Cassette tapes.
86s? No, before
Oh.
cassette tapes. 8
Oh.
tracks, yeah. So these big 8 tracks. And then we had cassettes, and then CDs, VHS, DVDs, Blu-rays, and even the HD
Mhm.
discs where Blu-ray kind of took over. I
Yeah.
feel like that kind of technology would have continued to develop, because we wouldn't have the cloud storage, right? We wouldn't have computers
Mhm.
with big hard drives. We wouldn't have the phones with all the storage, that kind of thing. So we would need more physical media to be able to have things out there. We would still be buying movies and taking them home rather than
Yeah.
Netflix and services like that. Those things wouldn't exist. Blockbusters like video stores, they would have
Still be in
obviously,
business.
yeah, they would still be in business, and they would have evolved
Mhm.
with the times. So whatever, the next thing
Yeah.
was in terms of media storage, that's what you'd be renting there. The same with games, that kind of thing.
I also think a possibility could have been,
Mhm.
since we weren't able to like call and video chat with people and
Yes.
without the internet, and this is extremely like fantasy level of imagining what would have happened, is maybe they would have focused more on teleportation. Because I just wish that existed, because my family's all super far away. I would love to just
Like
step through a
Star
portal and be
Trek,
there.
sticking
Yeah.
the translocator, yeah, step
Yeah, so
translocator,
like
yep.
maybe since we couldn't get that fix of seeing them on a video, I mean, we could
Mhm.
still call them and stuff, but that would be cool if they went the other route and focused on like
Mhm.
breaking matter down into particles and teleporting it.
Yeah. And even things that are as simple as like literally finding a job. Like how many, and I know I do it. Like I do it
Mhm.
on company time. I pull out my phone and look at Indeed.
Yeah, I used to do that too.
Yeah. Um, things like finding a job, they would be a lot more like, I guess calling it old school, but actually like pounding the pavement, dropping off the resumes, looking at job boards, looking in your newspaper. Oh my God. Speaking of the internet, so I remember not where we're living now, but where we previously lived, I had been to the thing where anywhere that I've lived in my life, like outside of my parents' home when I was on my own, how did I get that apartment? How did I rent that house? I got the newspaper. I looked at the
Mhm.
classifieds. So I got a newspaper when we were moving, and I'm like, why the fuck? There's like nothing to rent or whatever. And then I found out, so Kijiji is basically Canada's Craigslist. So then I
Ah.
find out that there's Kijiji and all the rental shit is on there. So I had to go through
Oh, they
there
got moved.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
and do it all online, which wasn't a bad thing, but it was just like,
Yeah.
wow, picking up the
When it was
newspaper.
unregulated, it was like, I mean, as far as Craigslist goes, I don't know about,
Mhm.
was it Kijiji? It reminds me of Khajiit
Kijiji,
from
yeah.
the Elder Scrolls, but Craigslist was, man, it was a wild place. I remember getting on there like as a teenager and being like, oh my gosh, I don't even know what half of this means. So yeah, maybe a lack of internet probably for the best in some ways.
Yeah, and the thing is, you have to think too. Like you were mentioning the food apps, right? Wouldn't exist, and
Mhm.
food apps are kind of a big part of what they call the gig economy. So
Mhm.
there are jobs there, but they're not like your traditional jobs. It's basically like almost like a self-employment, even though you're working for a company. And the reason I say that is because you don't have the benefits built in, you
Mhm.
don't have your taxes automatically deducted from whatever. Like you
Yeah.
actually have to pay attention, you have to do that
And
stuff
you also set
yourself.
your
So
hours though.
yeah,
Yeah.
set your hours as well. But like stuff like, so we would have your traditional taxis still, which do still exist,
Mhm.
but things like Uber, and in Canada we have a U Ride as well as Uber, and I know there's another thing in the States for a ride service. I'm honestly blanking out on the name of it, but like you would, that kind of thing wouldn't exist, because how, unless they had, and car phones were a thing before the internet
Yep.
existed. My dad had a car phone when we were kids growing up, and the funny thing is, once the car phone became a thing of the past and we had cell phones, his car phone number actually just became his cell phone number for like the rest of his life. So he probably had that cell
Awesome.
phone number for like 3 or more decades just because
Nice.
it was a car phone originally. So like we could call Dad the car when he was out driving. And back then it wasn't illegal. He could answer that phone and be on the road and be driving
Yeah.
and be talking on that phone. And it was like kind of like your telephone in your home where it's an actual handset. You pick up, it's corded, and you're talking
Oh my
and you're
gosh.
holding the receiver. Yeah.
It's way more dangerous.
Yeah, exactly, right? And that I feel like that kind of technology probably would have evolved as well, right? Because we had the old school, like the old like original telephones where you had the receiver and you were holding the base and you were speaking into that, and then we kind of got the receiver and the speaking part in one part of the handset for the phone. We had your rotary dial, then you had the push button, then you went to the cordless. I feel like even phone technology probably would have evolved beyond the cordless. Like, I mean, when you were like young and you talked on the phone to your friends all the time, there literally nothing cooler than going and sitting in your backyard in the summer and having your cordless handset out there so you could be in the backyard and talk on the phone. Now that's such like a regular thing, but back then not everybody had cordless phones. So you kind of like you thought you were cooler because you had that cordless phone and
Oh
you were
yeah.
able to do that. Is there anything anybody wanted to add before we continue? Okay. So another thing, healthcare. I feel parts of it would be different. Parts of it
Lazy
may or may not
Harlequin
be
beamed
better.
in.
There is a lot of information that's online now, and things like telemedicine, right? I don't know.
Yep.
In the States, do you like some of our clinics here, right? You go and it's all telemedicine. So you go in and there's like a nurse practitioner there that kind of does your intake and everything, but then they literally
Oh.
get on a video call with a doctor who then you speak with the doctor.
Normally, in my experience, like what I've had to do is fill out the forms through a portal, and then the doctor just eventually will see me. I don't see, that's cool that you see a nurse practitioner first, but actually, without internet, I'd be dealing with issues right now myself because my prescriptions, one of them is a controlled substance, and I couldn't re-up that until it was completely out, and that happened to be after we left to go from Florida to Ohio. But I was able to go right into the portal and request the refill be moved to a pharmacy up here. So without the internet, that would have been a lot more difficult. I'd probably be on hold all day.
Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of controlled substances, like here, we actually, that friggin' thunder song is always playing in my head.
Thunder. Hear the
Yes,
thunder. Yeah, me too.
exactly.
Lightning and the
I know,
thunder.
yeah. But things like
Static
that,
thread has joined.
like
Quick, hide
we
your
have it like
avatars.
you literally go into a walk-in clinic, and one of the first things you see in the signs posted is we do not prescribe controlled substances. And even in emergency, it's the same kind of things. Like we do not prescribe narcotics. So they want you to actually go to your physical doctor for that. Well, the unfortunate thing is here is there's this huge shortage, and a lot of people don't even have a doctor. Some people have been, one of the girls that I work with had mentioned to me the other day that her, I think, mother-in-law or stepmother, one of those things anyway, has been on a waiting list for a family doctor for 12 years. Now, if you have something that's, wrong with you, obviously that does move you up. A former job I had, one of the girls I worked with, she had been diagnosed with COPD, which is a lung issue, and she was on the waiting list. So after that diagnosis, she actually called them and she said, I've just been diagnosed with COVID. Does that change things? And she was told, yes, it does.
Oh,
so
that's
things
good.
like that will get you bumped up the list. But I mean, if you're just an average person that doesn't have a lot of health issues or any issues, that's another thing, that's kind of, you're just kind of left to wait, and then you have to utilize those things like the walk-in clinics, like going to the emergency department. And our healthcare, well, we do have healthcare coverage. It doesn't cover everything. It doesn't cover dental. It doesn't cover eyes. It doesn't cover, here, like any kind of that thing. So if you've got a cavity, if you've got an abscessed tooth, if anything like that, you have to go and you have to pay. So, and prescriptions as well. So I wonder if things maybe would have developed more, like without the internet and without it opening up, ease ease of access for us, yes, but also I feel kind of like the ability for them to keep as they are, and to just, create like these portals and these, you can actually, like, here there's one in town you can actually make an appointment with, so you actually have an appointment. It's still kind of a walk-in clinic. Even though you have an appointment, you still have to do the telemedicine where the doctor is on a video chat. But maybe things would have developed differently, and maybe we would
Yeah.
have more doctors. Maybe people wouldn't be in such a state of flux where they don't actually, they don't have a family doctor or a PCP kind of thing. So maybe we
Yeah.
would have seen more of that.
And I could see it being like more of a midwife type scenario where it's like,
Mhm.
well, not so much midwife, but where it'd be a traveling doctor that would come to your house. Maybe there'd be more job opportunities with that
Yeah, and
instead
I mean
of.
that was a big thing in the past as well. Like, how many
Mhm.
movies have you seen that are set back in the horse and buggy days, and somebody has to go get the doctor,
Mhm.
and the doctor rides in, on the horse and
Yeah.
carriage, and that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So, that's something that they got away from as things evolved, and there was vehicles and all that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you never know where we might be right now with that.
Mhm.
So that's an extremely good point. And we have an event behind us, so we will end this on time. We've got 13 minutes here. One thing that I feel would have been a lot different than now is privacy.
Mhm.
We all have cell phones, okay, and we know that our cell phones are pretty much listening to us at all times. Static and I have
Oh
done
yeah.
this many times where we've sat there and we've had a conversation about something,
Mhm.
and we use ad blockers, okay? I never see an ad on YouTube. I don't see ads all over websites. We use ad blockers, but there's been times where we've done whatever, had a conversation, whatever, then I go and do something on my phone, and I have Firefox and Chrome on my phone, and my phone's an Android. So I use Firefox as my default browser, and it's set as my default browser. But the thing is, what's the search bar on my phone? The search bar is Google. So if I search something on my phone, it's going to open in Chrome, which I don't use, so I don't have an ad blocker on. So there'll be times where I'll search for something, and then of course I'll see like a little ad or something, and it's literally what we were just talking about, like, an hour before, a day before, whatever. So it's like, it's so easy for them to listen in. And I know most of this shit is just so people can sell us shit, or get our
Yeah.
analytics, that kind of thing. It's not like the government's
Mhm.
listening in because you're a big drug dealer and they got to take you down kind of thing. But
Just kidding.
I feel like, even surveillance would be a lot different, because they would still be in the age of having to, tap your telephone, than digital monitoring.
Mhm.
There could be a lot of different privacy laws that don't exist now, because there had to be regulations. The focus would have been different, because it would have been on physical communication channels, rather than digital. They'd have to get into your mail, that kind of stuff, where now everything's just kind of all online. And even, even if you buy something online, right, you put your credit card information in, and even if you hit the no, don't save, so it's not stored locally, you're still putting that information in, you're still submitting it, it's still going somewhere. There is the potential for somebody to get that
Yeah.
information. And, we all know that servers, that get hacked, that store that information, that don't have it properly encrypted, and that's how you end up on lists. And the one funny thing too, like, when I first started at my current job, um, when I was given my login, when I was given my password for the manager stuff, he literally made my password 1234566. So every time I go in and do like run the reports at the end of the day and stuff like that, and they have Chrome, every time I log in, and I don't have access to change that password myself. It can only be changed by the general manager and probably
That is
people
such a
above
dumb
him.
password.
Right? And every time I go and I log in on Chrome, I get a pop-up. Your password has been recently discovered in a data breach. You might want to change that. And I'm like, and you know, it doesn't
You're like, not my
affect anything.
problem.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not going to affect anything there. But like, it makes me wonder how many people do that online. They're at home, that pops up, and they're like, oh, I'll hit OK. And then they just go along with their lives, and they don't change that password. And we know people have been screwed over, and even, you know, the telephone scamming that they do, and that kind of stuff, I feel like would still exist, but it wouldn't be as easy because they wouldn't have all these lists from all these data breaches online that gives them calling lists, that kind of stuff.
It'd be the literal chain mail that I used to.
Oh my God.
Well, my parents used to get
in
it.
this letter and mail it to 5
Yeah, or else
people.
you're going to be cursed forever. Those were hilarious.
Yeah. Oh God.
Are we still going to do where we ask the audience to come up with the next?
We can kind of you know, I only had a couple more points.
Sorry.
Yeah, just like, you know, trade, all that kind of stuff. It would still be old school, like faxing. Like nowadays it's like, what, you hear somebody faxes or you have to fax something to someone and you're like, why don't you just use email? But I mean, faxing would be a lot more prevalent. Still, in-person meetings,
more
telephones,
secure.
That kind of stuff. Yeah. And communication and advertising, you know, they would have to have, you know, more regional kind of, you know, be in, they would actually have to be in like major city centers to spread outwards rather than just being able to be online and have websites and direct people there, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so
stock market would be completely different.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my God, like you see, what was you see, there's some, and I'm blanking on it now, but like
Is it Wolf
seen
of
movies.
Wall Street maybe?
No, not that one. But where you've seen it and it'll show like the stock market floor, right?
Iron
all the
Wolf
people are
has
in there
glitched
and they're all
into the
like making the
Matrix.
calls
Crammed
or whatever.
in
They're
there.
all yelling,
Yeah.
sell, and all that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So one
Chaos.
thing that we were thinking, and we'll do this, we've got 8 minutes left. So we kind of just thought of this topic ourselves, but we thought it would be interesting if we could get input from the audience to kind of maybe shape each episode going forward. So your kind of ideas about a butterfly effect topic, like what if, you know, what if cell phones, maybe we had the internet, but what if cell phones didn't exist? What if they were never created? Or
what if Hitler was never born?
Yeah, well, that one, I mean, that's so trite.
That's true.
I think we all, yeah. But like one of the ones you suggested too was, you know, what if the British won the American was it American Revolution? Yeah, you know, that kind of stuff. So we would like to get some suggestions. I'm not going to promise that we will use them, but just to give us things to think about in choosing the topic. So we'll go with Bailey first. Just make it quick, Bailey, because we only have a few minutes left. What's your idea?
What if smart cars weren't invented?
Smart cars. Okay, that's interesting. Yeah. Thank you, Bailey. Okay, so Divine, I'm just going to pick on you. Oh, you're still megaphone. I don't even have to megaphone you. See, there, it was meant to be. You're still megaphoned. I want a suggestion from you.
I'm sorry. What am I doing?
So a suggestion for a potential topic. We wanted to get some ideas from the audience. So like a butterfly effect. Like what if something wasn't invented? What if something happened differently? What if something never happened? Echo, I'll grab you next. So far we've got what if smart cars had never been invented?
What if what was never invented?
Smart cars.
Smart cars. Oh.
Yeah, like Tesla.
But you're trying to give us the topic.
Yeah, yeah. Is there something that maybe you thought of or you're wondering or you think would make an interesting topic?
Or we could circle back after. Yeah, we could circle back.
Yeah, you might have to, but I've only got like 5 minutes, so yeah.
Yeah.
So okay.
Okay, Echo, what's your suggestion? I've got your megaphone.
So yeah, my thought was, and it's kind of a big one, it's going to be a
Mhm.
huge butterfly effect, is
Oh,
what if
geez.
we never invented the railroads?
Oh my
Ooh.
god.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Like life
interesting,
as we know
actually.
it would not exist, you know?
Yeah, because
Mhm.
so much
The
shipping
Wild
and stuff
West
like
and
that was
stuff.
done.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Speaking of shipping, I wonder if it would literally just be more ships because we didn't have
Yep,
shipping.
that's true.
Yeah. But we
And then
should talk
Iron
about
Wolf.
that. We'll save that for an episode.
I
Lots
got
of
it.
driving
Yeah.
cars.
Iron Wolf, you are megaphone now.
Yeah, this is a boring one. What if alcohol didn't exist?
Oh, that's. I
Prohibition
don't think
never
that's
ended.
boring.
For
Yeah.
drinking.
What
That's
if
huge.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
drinking
Okay, I got
specifically.
mine.
Okay, Divine.
What if guns were never invented?
Oh my gosh,
What
that's a
if
good one
guns
too.
were never invented? I'm typing all of these suggestions
Oh, good.
down
Yeah.
because so that way like we just have an ongoing list that we can pick from.
Mm-hmm.
One sec. Okay, I see you jumping, Echo. Bailey had his hand up first, so we'll go Bailey and then Echo.
What
Go
if
ahead, Bailey, your
prisons were
megaphone.
never existed?
I would think they would kill all the criminals. I don't know. They wouldn't be
Or
housing
it would
them.
be more kind of
Hello
what's
there,
the
just
nice
crossed
way of
the
saying this?
digital
Like forced
threshold.
labor. I know the not nice way of saying it.
Yeah. Okay, Echo, your megaphone.
Off with your head.
So how about you take a different spin on the
Mhm.
butterfly effect and talk about what a smile will do?
Oh,
What,
that's a good
sorry?
idea.
Say that again.
What
What
one person smiling to another person, what the butterfly effect is of
Oh.
that.
That's a good
I
idea.
mean,
I like that too.
that, oh my
It's a
God, it's
different spin, like
endless.
going in the future instead of going back to the past.
Yeah, exactly.
I
That's
like that
interesting.
too. Yep. I think we could go in both directions. That's
Mhm.
that's a really
Mhm.
good idea. Okay, so smiling. Okay, perfect. So I've got that down as well. We have 3 minutes left. Do we have any other ideas or suggestions? Okay. Oh yeah, go ahead, Shoseki. Perfect.
Sweet.
I've got that one down. Okay.
Mhm.
So if that's the end of the ideas, in the last couple minutes, I'd just like to get some feedback if anyone has some to share regarding your thoughts. If you have any suggestions on better presenting things or
Yeah, ways to improve the podcast.
audience interaction, that kind of stuff. Divine, one sec. Oh, you're still megaphone. See, I've just left you on megaphone. Go ahead.
Oh, good thing I wasn't unmuted. I was just shouting at my kids. I'm just joking. I just want to say I have therapy in 2 minutes, and y'all are awesome, and I'll be back in like 45.
Okay,
Yep.
Aw,
thank
thanks,
you,
Divine.
Divine.
Have a good session.
I see you jumping,
Bye.
Iron. Oh,
Mwah.
Iron, I left you on megaphone too. Go ahead, my friend.
Yeah, I think let's try out this form for a while and see how it goes.
Okay.
I think it's working fine.
Thank
Good,
you.
yay. Happy bounce.
I appreciate the feedback. Thank you. Okay. So I don't see anyone else raising hands or jumping. So we'll go ahead and end this. I thank you all for coming. Right after us, we do have Faye reading from Ready Player 2. I believe we can drop portals here. So Moth, was there anything that you wanted to say in closing before we send everybody off to join Faye?
Just thanks everyone for coming. It was really awesome hearing all of your input on this topic, and I look forward to hearing more input next time.
Absolutely. And we definitely want this to be an interactive thing. I know we talked a lot up here. I probably talked more.
Oh,
but
I did not prepare as much, I think. Also,
Okay.
I was going off
I
of
had
you a
notes I
lot,
was
so I'm
looking
glad you
at.
did.
Iron, are
prepare.
you jumping or did you want to say something?
Yeah, is there a volume for 2D in here?
I asked Echo, I left him a message about putting controls there. I just went into advanced controls and turned my arm. They are on your wrist, and then I just muted it that way. But yeah, I did ask for some controls to be on the wall or something in the future.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're like, this is the first time, like, we saw the space, we absolutely loved it. I think we overlooked a couple things like that. It is not as easy in 2D to do.
I love the
whole controls
beanbag
thing,
chairs.
but yes, I know.
Those are so cool.
So Shoseki, thank
thank
you
you,
so
Echo.
much. You can go ahead and end the stream now. I'm going to drop some portals so people can go join Faye. And thank you for being willing to stream this. We really appreciate
Yes,
it.
thank you. Oh, you've been back
Okay.
here.
Thank you.
Hello.